Welcome to a lesson on trigonometry. This lesson is being presented by Peter Smith. The goal of this lesson is to 1. Use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of one side of a right-angled triangle when the lengths of the other two sides of the triangle are given. 2. Use the trigonometric ratios to find the length of one side of a right-angled triangle when the length of one side and the size of one of the acute angles are given. 3. Use the trigonometric ratios to find the size of one of the acute angles of a right-angled triangle when the lengths of two of the sides are given. The Pythagorean Theorem. This theorem is a useful concept in trigonometry. It is one of those concepts we often use in geometry. There are few things you need to keep in mind. 1. In using the Pythagorean theorem, the triangle has to be a right-angled triangle. So, you must see a 90-degree angle. 2. The Pythagorean theorem is used to find the length of one side of a right-angled triangle when the lengths of the other two sides are given. So, you must always have the length of two sides before you can find the length of the third side. 3. The longest side of any right-angled triangle is called the hypotenuse. This is always the side opposite the 90-degree marked angle. Also, you have to know the formula involved when using the Pythagorean theorem. If you have the sides of a triangle labeled A, B, C, the Pythagorean theorem tells us that c squared, the length of the longest side squared, equals to the sum of the square of the other two sides. Or, this can be simplified to c equals the square root of the sum of the square of the other two sides. If you want to find one of the shorter sides, A or B, A squared equals c squared minus b squared. Or, this can be simplified to A equals the square root of c squared minus b squared. If you want to find B, B squared equals c squared minus a squared. Or, this can be simplified to B equals the square root of c squared minus a squared. Let us look at some examples that will show us how we use the Pythagorean theorem. In this first example, we are required to find the unknown side marked with an X. This is the longest side. It is called the hypotenuse. So, we will use the formula to find the hypotenuse. C equals the square root of A squared plus B squared. By substituting these values, we get x equals the square root of 3 squared plus 4 squared. Simplifying the inside of the radical gives us x equals the square root of 9 plus 16. Then, x equals the square root of 25. X equals 5 meters. The second problem requires us to find the length of one of the shorter sides. Note that we have the value for the hypotenuse, and whenever you have the hypotenuse, to find the length of any of the other two shorter sides, you always subtract the square of the short side given from the square of the hypotenuse. These are the steps we will use. B. We could start off with B or A. It does not matter. Equals the square root of c squared minus a squared. By substituting these values, we get y equals the square root of 13 squared minus 5 squared. Simplifying the inside of the radical gives us y equals the square root of 169 minus 25. Then, y equals the square root of 144. Finally, y equals 12 centimeters. The trigonometric ratio. In this part of trigonometry, there are three terms you will be learning. These terms are hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. In any right-angled triangle, the hypotenuse will always be the longest side, or the side opposite the 90 degrees angle. The two new terms are opposite and adjacent. These are the two terms used to describe the two short sides. The opposite is the side opposite the acute angle you are given or trying to find. You can see that this side is opposite to the marked angle. The adjacent is the side which adjoins the acute angle. You can see that the side is the side next to the angle. Note how the labeling of the sides changes as the acute angle is shifted. The opposite side and adjacent side are shifted based on where the acute angle is. The trigonometric ratios are used to 1. Find the length of a side when the length of one side and the size of one acute angle are given. 2. Find the size of an angle when the lengths of two of the sides are given. There are three trigonometric ratios you need to learn. These are sine, cosine, and tangent. The ratios are as follows. The sine of an angle equals the opposite side, divided by the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle equals the adjacent side, divided by the hypotenuse. The tangent of an angle equals the opposite side, divided by the adjacent side. It is important to get the names of the sides in the right order. There are few acronyms we use to remember these ratios. Three of these are SA, CA, COA. You might be familiar with these. These remind us that sine of an angle is the opposite side, divided by the hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent, divided by hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite, divided by adjacent. Or, maybe you are familiar with this phrase which we sometimes use to remember these ratios. It says, "Silly old Harry caught a herring trawling off Afghanistan," where the words are used to describe the ratios. Let us look at some examples that will show us how we use the trigonometric ratios. Find the side marked x. To find the length of a side of a right-angled triangle, using the trigonometric ratios, you can follow these steps. 1. First identify the acute angle you are working with. 2. Then label the sides of the triangle with the words opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. 3. Identify the sides you are going to involve in the problem. 4. Identify the function involving the two sides. 5. Set up an equation and solve it to find the unknown side. You may pause the video and try to label this triangle on your own. This example, we are not doing anything that involves opposite. The two terms involved here are adjacent and hypotenuse. So we have to involve the function involving adjacent and hypotenuse. This is the function, the cosine function. The cosine of an angle equals the adjacent side, divided by the hypotenuse. Cosine 35 degrees equals x, divided by 12. By cross multiplying, we have get x equals cosine 35 degrees times 12. Cosine 35 degrees equals 0.8192. X equals 0.8192 times 12. Therefore, the length of the side marked x equals 9.8304 centimeters. Let us now look at finding an angle. Find the marked unknown angle. To find the unknown angle, using the trigonometric ratios, you can follow these steps. 1. First identify the unknown acute angle you are finding. 2. Then label the sides of a triangle with the words opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. 3. Identify the sides you are going to involve in the problem. 4. Identify the function involving the two sides. 5. Set up an equation and solve it to find the unknown angle. You may pause the video and try to label this triangle on your own. In this example, we are not doing anything that involves adjacent. The two terms involved here are opposite and hypotenuse, so we have to involve the function involving opposite and hypotenuse. This is the function. The sine function. The sine of angle theta equals the opposite side, divided by the hypotenuse. Sine theta equals 3, divided by 5. Then, sine theta equals 0.6. Theta equals the inverse sine of 0.6. And this gives us 36.87 degrees. You have just watched a lesson which was presented by Peter Smith. Please join me in another lesson where we learn more important math topics. Let us think of education as the tools of developing our greatest abilities, because in each of us there is a private hope and dream.